Ballpark Nation presents. Welcome to Go Go Astros, your look at the two-time World Series champions from three guys who have been here since Art Howe had hair.
We may be of differing opinions this morning. Oh, I thought it was my turn.
Oh,
it could be your turn.
Well, it's your turn, but I wanted to bring in. Okay, yeah, no, we'll bring in the off-camera conversation here in a minute. Go ahead, Andy.
I assumed we would. We were discussing career changes. We'll get to his in just a second. The Astros treaded water for the last 6 days, so they don't need career changes, at least not all of them. This is Go Go Astros. It's Monday, May 13th. We're not in last place right now, so that's a thing. That's not a thing we thought we'd be discussing back in March. With me today is James Christopher and Brian Arbor, your resident Astro experts. I'm Andy Tomchesson. It's 3-3 this week, guys. How you feeling? Did you kiss your sister?
I don't think 3-3 is the same as a tie. No, I mean 3-3 on the road against two pretty good baseball teams. I was impressed with how the Astros won, I guess, at least two of the games where they did come from behind late to win. They kept things close, which has been the model for this team for so long. And it just does feel like things are starting to come together, maybe slower than possible. I'm not worried about Javier. I know people's mileage may vary on that, but it was really nice to see Justin Verlander doing Justin Verlander things last night.
Brian?
I'm a little more pessimistic because they're 10 games under 500.
Shocking.
I know. And I don't think I'm usually pessimistic. It's usually, one of the things that analytical thought gives you is like in the long run. But, as the economist John Maynard Keynes said about the long run, people eat every day. And right now the Astros are kind of need to win on a more sort of regular basis. So they went, 9-11 over the last 20 games, and they need to get better, and they need to get better relatively soon.
But hey, Alex Bregman's hitting .333 in his last 4 at bats or something. I don't know. We're grasping for straws on the television broadcast, clearly, because tickets got to get sold, guys.
Yeah. You forgot that I led your team in 9th inning doubles in the month of August.
It's an interesting time for Astros fans. We are, as I mentioned, not in last place. The Angels are being the Angels now that they're missing Mike Trout for however many games. There is an opportunity over the next 3 weeks to make up ground in the division. Is this team finally primed to do that? Because we've been waiting for signs. And I'm a little bit more on Brian's side about this last week. Yeah, it's great to go 500 on the road. If you do that all season long, in theory, you're going to have a good year, if provided you didn't dig yourself a 13-game hole to work out of. But the way they lost the 3 games that they lost, it wasn't like they were close and let it go late, or it was one or 2 run games. There were 3 blowouts in the 3 losses. The 3 wins were impressive. Granted that, but it's kind of a mixed bag for me. But our division's kind of garbage. The Rangers haven't run away with it like none of us kind of predicted they would.
Rangers got swept by the Rockies this weekend. Give you a sense.
We were going to get there. The Mariners have fits and starts, and the A's. I mean, the A's are the story of the division for me right now, but. Yeah. We've got 4 with them coming up in just a little bit. Brian, we'll start with you. Is this team finally ready to start playing consistently decent baseball? I don't want to say good, just decent.
Yeah, there are a couple reasons to think so. One is the back end of the bullpen has looked like we thought the back end of the bullpen should look over the last 2 weeks. And there was plenty of indications in the early season that they were mostly pitching in bad luck, and they would, get back to that, get back to sort of what we expected. Not entirely. There were some negative signs, but for the most part, lots of strikeouts, very few, just lots of hits, finding holes. The pitching staff is as healthy as it can be. We finally have Verlander, Fromber, and Javier at the top of the rotation. We need to get them straightened out, particularly Javier, who had the really rough start, couldn't get his fastball working. in the Saturday game. Hey, but we won this series against Detroit because we got good starts from Fromber, who held the line until the bats came through on Friday, and then Verlander, who as always, when Verlander pitches well, there's this debate among headline writers whether it's vintage Verlander or classic Verlander. I'll take it.
I always go with alliteration on those kind of calls.
Vintage, definitely.
Jim, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think there's now always going to be some trepidation when you trot out Arrighetti or Brown, and that's going to happen in this Oakland series. But I don't believe Oakland's as good as their record, and I think, like you said, Angels are playing like the Angels without Mike Trout, and those are 7 of your next 10 games. So I do believe that for as much as I'm still positive and optimistic, it needs to really get going now. We are close to Memorial Day. I'm less worried about the games under 500 than I am games behind in the division, and they're 7 back. So
6.5.
6.5 back. So they ended up, I guess, gaining a half a game before the road trip started.
Yeah, they went 500, but gained 2 games on the Rangers, which Rangers aren't in first place, but I always like to keep track of where the Rangers are.
Yeah.
Because as Brian mentioned, they managed to not only lose a series to the Colorado Rockies, one of the few teams that have a worse record than the Astros. They got swept by the Colorado Rockies over the weekend, which was super fun for those of us paying attention to that.
I believe the Rangers are filing a protest that those games were not played in Mexico City.
Yeah,
it's the Rockies' kryptonite. Also, front office decision making, but that's a different story.
We were talking off camera about changing careers, and one of the things that came up over the weekend is a Bob Nightingale article about maybe Joe Espada might be changing careers if things don't turn around soon. The Astros said the right thing, supposedly, and he's got all the rope he needs to hang himself with, and will get all the time to fix things. But there have been rumors now starting about his lack of communication or type of communication in the clubhouse. Supposedly 2 veteran players, unnamed sources have said, have approached the front office about Espada and his demeanor. And of course, as Bob Nightingale will do, we're going to attach some names to this new opening that doesn't exist. And Alex Cora, our old friend Alex Cora, is one of those guys. How much danger is Joe Espada in? And I'll start with Jim. I realize we're 40 games into a season, his first season, and we all knew there were going to be some growing pains. But is there smoke behind this? Is this Bob Nightingale getting sources from Alex Cora's agent about where's this coming from?
Well, I don't know about the sources, but I do think there's a fair amount of danger for him, not this season, but after this season if things don't turn around. One of the things that when you talk about leadership, and one of the things the military does is you never ever, when you become go from being an enlisted guy to a non-commissioned officer, you're very rarely a non-commissioned officer in the same unit that you are a leader in, because it is hard to change that role and change what your voice is and how you're talking to them. And for as much as I know all the players lobbied for Espada because of how he communicated, it's different to do it as the bench coach to now be the manager. And I don't know exactly what's going on in the locker room, but I'm not surprised that that's an issue, I guess is what I'm saying. I do think, and I didn't agree with this at the time, but there were some people that raised questions of should the veteran team really be dealing with a new manager this year? And if you think about the last 2 World Series winning managers were crotchety old guys leading veteran teams. So maybe there's something for that. I don't know, but it doesn't shock me. I do think if the Astros somehow miss the playoffs, or even a wild card round exit, I would think more often probably you'll see a managerial change at that point. Whether it's deserved or not, I think you will.
Brian?
Yeah, I have 2 points on the Nightingale report. One is Nightingale is the best sourced reporter into Astros ownership. And so...
Is that for real? Is he really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, I said that very specifically. It's I don't know that is Jim Crane himself calling him, or when, Nightingale texts, because I'm sure these reporters just, they get up in the morning and text 100 sources and hope somebody writes it back. Got his text return from somebody. So he's proven this before, including he was the best. He was the closest reporter on what was going on around the James Click to Dana Brown transition. So there's something here, and notably here, do players complain about the manager? Sure. Did we hear about these before? No. The leak is something, and it may just be a leak to Joe, for Joe Espada to hear and not us fans. But hey, that's the way it gets transmitted to Joe Espada. The second part is the two managerial candidates that Nightingale listed are the two who do not have a contract for next year, Alex Cora and Skip Schumacher. So I don't put much stock into that part of it, other than just him saying, I need a second paragraph here, other than what I was told in this, what I was told here. And so I have no idea if it'd be Cora or Schumacher or, I guess Whitey Herzog's dead, but, something like that, or, whatever sort of name we can come up with for this type of manager. But I do think the first part of, Espada, that there's smoke to the fact that this got reported, and particularly by Bob Nightingale.
I can't see Alex Cora. I know that but I cannot see him being a viable candidate on many levels. One, the Red Sox haven't been very good since they themselves are also sort of shut down from illicit.
That didn't happen. Nothing happened. Boston did nothing. They're great. Ask any Dodgers fan about Mookie Betts in 2018. They'll tell you.
Yeah.
Great team.
So, go ahead, Brian.
Cora was a genius until the ALCS in 2021 when he got rings run around him by Dusty Baker that year.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dusty.
Yeah, and Alex Cora, I don't think I think his comments haven't been too. I don't know. I can't see that. I can see a new manager though if this veteran team leaves, misses the playoffs or loses in the first round, mostly because you have a small window and it's easier to replace the manager than it is to replace the guys. And if this were a rebuilding team, it obviously would be a way different conversation.
Well, a lot of people are trying to draw parallels to the 2005 Astros too, even though it doesn't really work cleanly on paper. And Jimmy Williams was replaced mid-year and replaced by Phil Garner, who came out of Kingwood, I guess. I'm not sure what he was doing prior to getting the manager job.
Well, there is a veteran from a bygone era hanging around that could be the manager.
Well, and you get back to that point. If you're going to ask me who is most likely in the front office to talk to Bob Nightingale, because he'll talk to anybody who puts a microphone in front of him, it very well could be Jeff Bagwell. And I don't want to pile on the Jeff Bagwell hate, but if you're looking for a source that doesn't need to be Jim Crane to Bob Nightingale, that would be probably where I'd start looking, because it's not real hard to get a quote from Jeff Bagwell these days. Just show up at his dry cleaners and he'll tell you, hey, they need to win more, or some other chestnut that he wants to share.
I did have a Bagwell's burger in Fayetteville, and it was better put together than his choices as GM so far.
You've been workshopping that joke all weekend.
I really have, actually. Hey, it's not just, they didn't just come out, man. I'm a professional. I got to put the work in.
It's, I guess, talking about the week to come. We've got 4 against the A's, and then you have to play what I think is the real rival for the Astros franchise in Major League Baseball, the Milwaukee Brewers, and Bud Selig made them this way.
Yeah.
Because they're in our rightful spot in the NL Central. That's a whole different show. And then you've got the Angels, and then you're back with the A's and then the Mariners. So for the next 2 weeks, there's a big opportunity to make up ground here. Oakland is sitting in 3rd place. They are 3 games ahead of the Astros at 19-23. The Angels are in a virtual tie with Houston, although Houston has that half-game leads because not in last place, which is the theme of today. And then the the division-leading Mariners. So there's a really good chance that you're in 3rd place, possibly, by the end of the weekend. What are the odds that we're placed on this? And start with Jim. That the Astros can finally not only put together a stretch of good baseball. I know we kind of talked about this earlier, but also do it at home, which has been a struggle since the All-Star break last year.
Well, I'm going to I can't get into the whole, they can't win at home and have that be a reason to make decisions, because I think that, I just think that I don't know where you go from there. I think that the Astros should be favored against these next 7 opponents at least. You talking about just by the weekend is over, where we'll be?
Well, I mean, if you win 4 against Oakland, you pass them up. If you sweep Oakland, can this team sweep anybody right now?
I think if you win the first game against Oakland, you absolutely can sweep, because then after Arrighetti, then you're getting into much more favorable pitching for the Astros. So, yeah, I think they can sweep. I think that they can. I think you might see them be 2 games under 500 by the time this little stretch of whatever this homestand is, by the time it's over.
And then you've got the Milwaukee after the A's. Milwaukee's a pretty good team this year.
They are.
They've had some luck go in their favor, but they're leading their division over the Cubs by half a game, and they hit the ball well. I think they're getting good pitching, which is not what you would have expected going into the season. So it'll be interesting to see. Brian, where are you on kind of this next week?
Yeah. Well, we know the Astros have more talent than what they've shown in the first 40 games. And so, at some point, we're all under the expectation they're going to show it on the field. Sooner, better than later would be useful. The A's have played better than expected this year. Their back of their bullpen's actually been very good. And they've got a couple more, hitters than, they have an A hitter or 2 this year, which makes them distinct from, say, last year. But the Astros have more talent, and you would expect the Astros to do better. Milwaukee, similar thing. They're playing ahead of sort of what we think here. But, in general, what the Astros really have struggled with is getting good starting pitching. They now have, the 5 guys they most want right now to be on the rotation. Maybe Urquidy will be back by the end of it. He'll replace Arrighetti, but we'll see sort of what they do with that. But you have, a set of starters you can have more confidence in. And I don't know, maybe if they get Hunter Brown and Oak, maybe if the Hunter Brown needs an opener guys seem to be really vindicated by the middle innings on Saturday. So just get the opener not to do so poorly.
Is anybody using an opener anymore? I don't even think Tampa Bay is really using the opener anymore. Okay.
Yeah, I think some people thought that was going to be a strategy and didn't realize that the only reason Tampa really was doing that was necessity. It wasn't because if we figured out a new way to play baseball. It was we have 3 starting pitchers, yeah. And that's and maybe in that context it would have made sense for the Astros. But as Brian mentioned, we've got 5 decent starting pitchers on our active roster right now. Urquidy, in theory, is coming back. He is in Sugarland this week, getting a rehab start, along with Chas McCormick. Get a couple more. Hopefully he'll get a couple more. I do think they may have brought Javier back. 1 rehab start too short, and I think that's why you saw what you saw.
And I would hope that, and that's a Dana Brown call. And so I think that's one of the things I hope this team gets better at, because Dana Brown is young in his GM career. Joe Espada is very young in his managerial career. And it feels like, based on the hole that they've dug themselves in, there's been a couple of moves that I would consider kind of desperation moves. The main one being bringing Javier back quicker than you needed to, because you didn't want to have an Arrighetti start on the road. Arrighetti.
Arrighetti.
Yeah, but they could. Yes, if we ever get back to a pandemic, we're going to add him to the roster of Italian dishes that are also Astros players.
The center of Italian culture, Katie.
100%. But we're talking about talents. There's a couple of things that I wanted you guys to kind of opine on. One of those is there's been a big talk about Joe Espada not doing anything. And this week he made a move. We haven't really talked about it. Bregman was finally moved out of the top 4 hitters in the lineup. With that series against the Yankees, he was moved down to 6th. That's big. The other one is roster construction. We've got a bunch of guys now in the outfield that look very similar. I know they all have their own different things, but between Mauricio Dubon, Jake Myers, Chas McCormick, and now Joey Loperfido, you've got 4 players that kind of profile similarly at this point of the season. So I guess that piece first. What do we do with these 4 guys? Because at some point McCormick's going to come back, and you've got to find playing time for everybody. And Brian, we can start with you on this.
Yeah. All right. On the Bregman part, They moved him down, and then he needed to give rest days to Altuve and to Tucker, and that pushed Bregman back up to the 4 spot. So, these things are sort of always sort of temporary, part of why I never get too much into lineup conversations because, they adjust and somewhat adjust naturally. I mean, the biggest issue with Alex Bregman is he never hits the ball hard, but he's hitting it less hard than he's ever sort of hit it before. He's a guy who sort of maximizes his swing, and it's really off so far this year. Broadly, I assume he will figure that out because, he's done that throughout his career, but I would expect him to have done that by now. And we kind of need him to do it because, Jeremy Payne has had a very hot start, but I don't think he's this good a hitter, but I hope I'm wrong. But he's been sort of contributing. As to the outfielders, you have a bunch of guys who are at a very sort of similar level. Part of what they've done is to bring in left-handed bats in both Loperfido and Trey Cabbage. Give a little bit more sort of platoon situation. Dubon is used very much as a platoon outfielder, that he will pinch hit for Loperfido or Cabbage when they bring in a left-hander against him, and he's done very well sort of in that role. I guess the biggest issue for Dubon is he's really an infielder, but none of the infielders want to take a day off. And they've done less than I expected of rotating like Altuve and Bregman through the DH spot this year. I think Altuve's just had 1 DH spot. Bregman hasn't had any. So there's been, and Payne has played every single inning at shortstop. So Dubon, to get him in the lineup, they need to play him in the outfield, which sort of only adds to what's going on there. And you identify the problem, Andy, is it's not clear that any of these guys are clearly better than any of the other players. Loperfido he's hitting 300, but he hasn't hit with power and doesn't have a lot of, has the strikeout to walk ratio that we expected. So that's been somewhat surprising that he hasn't been able. He got his first extra base hit yesterday, which was a hustle double, which again showing he's not been able to hit the ball that hard. Major League Baseball is hard, which I think is what we said 2 weeks ago. So what do? I think they will continue to sort of mix and match and try to play matchups and try to sort of find the best, combination for each particular day. It'd be great if someone, particularly Loperfido or McCormick, who I think have the most potential, would grab an everyday job, but neither one has this year so far.
Jim?
Well, just to add on to what Brian said, I can't disagree with that. And I do think maybe the scheduled rest days are coming because I agree that Dubon belongs in the infield, and I would just like to see him basically work his way around the infield, giving all those guys a day off here and there. Clearly, the guy had 4 hits yesterday, and I forgot how many RBI, but clearly he's moving it right now, and so is Pena. But then I think the other logical option is that one of those guys will be traded at the trade deadline to try to get a mid-level reliever or I still think that we're going to be buyers. So I think you can add a major league ready player with control and some minor leaguers that maybe are lower in the ranking to get somebody decent. So I do think it'll become an area of strength that the Astros can pull from. The Bregman move, I really agree with Espada making the move, and I agree when he did it. I think one of you guys said you can't manage desperately at this point, and so you have to give a veteran like Bregman time to move down. And if he doesn't, then you move him down. But if you start doing it after game 10, then you move him back up and he's back down. You act like you don't have a plan. You just portray the idea that you're throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. And so I think they've handled both the Bregman and the Abreu situation as best as you can. And I am very happy that Singleton's at first now, mostly because he's making defensive plays. Like beyond everything else, he seems to be actually doing a good job defensively, which I think if you remember on the show, at some point, that's all I wanted. I just wanted functional defense. So that's all I got to say about that.
Well, it's interesting. I think Singleton provides the defense, and if he can run into a ball every 8 to 10 games, I think we're all happy with that because it's certainly better than what Abreu is doing. It's not a long-term solution, but it's what you have now.
Yeah, he is not your first baseman in 2025.
I hope not, but we'll see. And Lindsay's already blocked me, so I have no worries about her coming back after this. I hope she watches the show. Thanks, Lindsay. It's some of the things have not felt like desperation, but kind of afterthoughts. We mentioned Altuve and Tucker finally getting days off after 38 and 39 games this year. Bregman had a day off or 2 days off because he had bubble guts a couple weeks ago, but that wasn't planned. So it's one of the things that Dusty Baker used to get a lot of grief about was planned rest days and sticking to those no matter what. And I think Espada has kind of gotten caught into the trap of, we're going to do these things that he talked about in spring training, and having done very few of them, like rotating guys through the DH and giving guys scheduled days off because they're older, because they've lost so many games. If we're sitting at 500 right now, I think you're seeing something more akin to what Joe Espada was saying you would see on the field. Some of the aggressiveness that they talked about on the base paths has gone away after the first couple of weeks of the season as well. And I think it's hard when for several games this season, you've walked into your first at bat being down 5 runs. And I think that curtails some of that aggressiveness as well. So I think, Espada's learning. And I think Dana Brown to some point is still learning on the job. But we do have some moves that need to be made sooner rather than later in my mind. But that's probably the All-Star break when you maximize the return on whoever it might be, whether it's Jake Myers or Trey Cabbage or what. And I'm not picking on anybody because I know the Jake Myers guys are out in full force on Twitter today.
Yeah.
He's had a good couple of weeks. Props where props are due. He is doing as well as most center fielders in Major League Baseball right now.
The tribalism of the whole thing is just stupid. I mean, every Astros fan wants everybody playing to play well. I don't think people are hoping there that they wish Jake Myers would play poorly because they're anti-Jake Myers. And if they do feel that way, then you're doing it wrong. We do have some breaking news, though. That's my breaking news sound effect.
We need a stinger.
What do you think? The Los Angeles Dodgers brand new set of City Connect jerseys have leaked. I have tweeted them on the Go Astros Show Twitter. I don't understand at all what they are about. They have a doctored word mark, and then it's a cream jersey with what looks like flecks of paint all over it. I will put it in the public comments of this show right now. Have at it, watchers of this show. I don't get it. If anybody can look at them and give me an opinion, that would be fantastic.
So is this their second set of City Connects? Because
they had the first team to get
Los Dodgers.
Yeah, they're the second team to get 2. Which
all right, I'm looking at them. So the Dodgers have this absolutely great, cursive font that says Dodgers, and this does not have that, and it just is. Is that from is that based on a font from an Arena Football League team in Los Angeles?
It's definitely got.
You know what it kind of looks like to me is
a B-level sci-fi movie released on VHS.
It kind of looks to me like the Space Cowboys logo or the Space Cowboys home jersey, that font.
Oh, it kind of almost does. That kind of almost Star Trek-y font.
Yeah.
Yeah. It definitely looks like it should be one of our City Connect jerseys.
That's fine because the Dodgers have wanted to be the Astros for the last 7 years, so it works out that way.
I will say on the uniform front, the finally was a pretty decent City Connect jersey, which were the Guardians that came out.
Yeah, I liked them.
And part of what was really nice about it is they really, the Guardians are named after these statues on this bridge right near the stadium, the Guardians of Traffic, and they really leaned into that part. And frankly, they should adopt some of that into the actual logo of the team and the uniform of the team, which is relatively boring otherwise.
Yeah, I feel like what should have been the goal of the City Connect, or maybe the driving force, was almost to make a uniform design that was hyper local and then based on the same color scheme, but maybe even just using your minority color or your minor color as sort of a main color for once. I really do still believe that the Space Cities uniforms are the best.
I think
Andy?
I think if it's allowed, I think if the program continues, which it apparently is going to, you can kind of look at the NBA, and I know that's going to be painful for you, Jim, to see what Nike will have in store for a second round of City Connects, because the Rockets went to Oilers colors. They went to their original version of their original uniforms from San Diego. So at some point, you'll see some more wild variations, the more teams that get into second and third iterations of this. And I guess that's what we're getting from the Dodgers now. Kind of a weird Nintendo 64 spray paint culture. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be, but
it does seem weird that they did not look at minor league baseball and see how they handle alternative jerseys. And
well, it's not weird. Nike doesn't have the contract for minor league baseball, so they don't want to look at it, because that would be admitting that they don't know what the hell they're doing. What? Hi.
Meanwhile, I won a sweet Star Wars jersey. The front is Anakin, the back is Vader. And I spent more money on the auction than I'm willing to agree. The Astros were getting blown out, and I wanted to win something.
There you go.
Speaking of winning, I don't think I'm spoiling anything by telling you that James Christopher is going to turn 50 in 2 years, and he's making life plans.
Life plans.
And to close out the show, just to let everybody know to be on the lookout, he rented a Camaro over the weekend, and it's been a life-changing experience for him.
Yeah. It's painful to get in and out of. I'm not going to lie to you. Okay.
Well, the good news is they don't make Camaros anymore, so congratulations. You got to ride in one of the last ones.
They don't make Camaros anymore? Well, okay, so either way, Dodge Charger. I'll go that route. Or Challenger. Sure. Which one's the two for?
So I think what you're trying to do is look for a new career, and you mentioned a couple of possibilities off the air.
Yeah. I think I want to become a private investigator or a bounty hunter. I'm having some drama at work with them bringing my ADA registered service dog, which, is a whole thing. So I thought maybe Orbit and I could fight crime. I could make my own hours, so I could still do Ballpark Nation. I think it's the winner.
Will Orbit be wearing a cape?
Well,
of course he will. I might wear a cape, and I'll, yeah.
If you're bringing Orbit into this, do we skip the sports car and go to an 18-wheeler and have like BJ and the Bear type adventures?
Yeah, we also did mention that I could be a bootlegger, and that would still fit,
But you could also travel around helping damsels in distress, provided Jess was okay with this. But yeah. I'm assuming she's going to be okay with the larger mustache for your PI career.
You know what? That might be the only part she's not okay with, because we actually did discuss this as a family today.
Well, I would probably look at it, but I'd probably check those things off before you really commit to the investment on a big rig or even a sports car.
Yeah, you're probably right. Maybe I just need to make this work.
Hey, and if you don't like this level of conversation, Astros win some games, and we'll have better things to talk about.
I think that's going to start tonight.
On that note, we will wrap it up for this week's episode. 4 against the A's starting tonight. Spencer Arrighetti on the mound, and we're hoping for good Arrighetti. We've seen good Arrighetti for a couple innings so far this season, so maybe he can do it from the very beginning. For Jim, for Brian, let's have a good week, guys. Be safe out there. Go Stros.
Be safe.